So in today's video, I'm talking about how to deal with jealousy, whether you're the one who's jealous or you have a feeling somebody else is jealous of you. But if you're new, my name's Michelle Ferris. I'm a psychotherapist and I love helping people create relationships that work. So jealousy is basically a feeling of resentment and bitterness towards someone else because they have something you want. There's also a common assumption that we make that because that other person has that thing that we want, that means we're never going to get it, which can create some feelings of hopelessness. Some examples might be someone has more money than we do, or we have a friend that's in really good physical shape and we're struggling with our weight. Or maybe you're a really good mom and your friend resents you for that and feels bad about their own parenting. Or maybe you have lots of friends in your life, but you have a friend that really struggles with that. These are all common areas where jealousy can pop up. Basically, we can be jealous of anyone for anything. So where does jealousy start? It basically starts in childhood as a feeling of insecurity, like we are not enough. This often happens if you grew up in a dysfunctional family where you had really negative, critical messages about yourself, making you feel like you're not enough, being compared to a sibling, not really being seen and heard for who you are as an individual. All of those experiences can create a sense of insecurity in us. So fast forward into adulthood, we may want what other people have because we feel like we'll never measure up. And that's sort of the root of how jealousy starts. You may even grow up with the belief that life isn't fair because to you, everybody else gets what they want, but you don't. So when we're jealous of other people, we're basically comparing our weaknesses to their strengths, which is a lose-lose proposition. Because let's face it, nobody's perfect. So when we're doing this kind of comparison, we have a lot of negative thinking and what I call negative self-talk, which is our internal dialogue, that private conversation we don't share with anybody else, is really negative, most likely about ourselves and even the relationships we have in the world. We may assume that we're never going to be enough because we don't have certain traits that we think we should, or we haven't succeeded in a way that we think we should, instead of being able to accept yourself as you are, because that's one of the goals here. We also might assume that there's somehow a limited supply of happiness, and there isn't enough good for everyone. And part of the work is realizing that that isn't true, that there's more than enough for everybody. If you've ever struggled with jealousy, say me too in the comments. I'm right there with you. This video is going to help. So how can you tell when somebody's jealous? You can always tell because you get a really uncomfortable feeling, but nothing's actually said. And there are certain warning signs that pop up, like there's an unspoken tension. They don't like it when good things happen for you. Because feelings of jealousy are never typically expressed directly. They're usually stuffed and they leak out in very passive-aggressive ways, like sarcasm or even hurtful comments. So for instance, whenever I stuff my feelings, I know the risk is that those feelings are going to be expressed in an indirect way when I least expect it. And in jealousy, that happens a lot, where maybe they make a comment that's really hurtful, or they make you feel guilty for having what you have, or they imply that you owe them because you have something they want. All of these things can really be hurtful and damaging to our relationships, which is why I'm highlighting them here for you. So how do you deal with someone who's jealous? The first thing I want you to do is do some journaling and write about what this situation brings up for you. Because often when somebody is jealous of us, it can be really uncomfortable. We might be triggered in some way that leads back to our childhood. Sometimes jealousy triggers feelings of shame or unworthiness for having what we do have, or judging ourselves for not having what we think we should. Then I want you to decide whether or not it's worth bringing up to that person. For instance, if they're toxic in any way, if they violate your boundaries, or they're highly critical whenever you bring something to their attention, then that's a sign that I absolutely would not bring it up. That's where you might need to practice detaching or really good firm boundaries. But if the person doesn't have any history of being abusive or mean in any way, and you know they have good intentions, then most likely you're struggling with fear, and I totally get that. So here's what you do in that case. You don't have to say, I think you're jealous of me, right? That direct approach might be too uncomfortable. So what I would do is wait for them to make a comment and then bring it up. Like, you know what, I noticed that the last time we got together, you made a comment about me having money, and I just want to check that out. What did you mean by that? Notice what I did. I'm literally just asking them what they meant about what they already said. So this is a super gentle way to ask somebody if they're jealous and if they're willing to talk about it. Now, if this is a huge emotional trigger that you cannot manage because the emotions are too intense, then I would say find a therapist and try to work through that issue in therapy. Because sometimes when there's jealousy, it goes back to childhood in a very toxic way, and you need to process that alone with a professional, not in your relationship. Now, if you're the one who struggles with jealousy, say me too in the comments. I've been there too. The work is around improving your self-esteem. This is about learning how to accept who you are, flaws and all, for being perfectly imperfect, exactly as God made you. Because honestly, that's the biggest part of this recovery work, is learning how to love yourself and trust yourself. And that's what I talk about a lot in my self-trust journal, because this is a huge gap we typically have in our work, is feeling bad about ourselves or looking to other people to fill that void because we don't know how to fill it ourselves. You're not alone if you're doing that, but believe me, working on your self-esteem is going to help a lot. And let's face it, there will always be somebody prettier, younger, smarter, has more money, has more friends. Doesn't really matter what it is, because that's not the point. The point is to accept yourself as you are, because that's self-love. That's good self-esteem. To accept that we're not better than or less than anyone else. We are exactly where we need to be, and we are worthy. Because then you can go out into the world and create the kind of relationships that are really loving and good for you. And just remember, even though I know jealousy can be a painful thing to work with, be gentle with yourself. There is absolutely a reason you are struggling with jealousy right now, and I hope this video has helped. So the next thing I want you to do is I want you to go watch my video on self-esteem, because that's your next step. Thanks so much.